Hi there. This is my second reflection. The date is June 20th. So the first thing I wanted to do was describe one concept, skill, or social work value that you learned from the activity. And so just to that point, something that I found incredibly interesting during the activity was, I cannot remember the name of the classmate, but a classmate talked about her time working in an African American community where she would work with young men. I believe it was with Children's Division or something. She would work with young black men, and oftentimes she would meet resistance from that individual's family, typically from the father, an African American father. And she believes it was due to her race, her skin color. She herself is a Caucasian female, and the reasoning behind that, what she described, and what she claimed that her field instructor at the time described to her, was that they wanted male role models, and they wanted African American male role models. For whatever reason, from what I heard, there, for some reason, must be a lack of trust between those two communities, in particular, maybe with Caucasian healthcare providers or Caucasian clinicians and African American community members that are in need of either, in this case, it was simple community support, like educational support, but it's easy to believe that that might carry over to medical professionals and social workers working in other areas with minority communities. And in this case, we'll be talking about African American communities. So that was the concept that I found interesting throughout our discussion. And to that effect, the area that I wanted to identify as far as maybe why individuals in the African American community and other minority communities may feel, untrusting may be a word to use, or just maybe unsure of what to believe when working with Caucasian individuals, social workers, medical providers, or in this case, an educational aide. So I want to know why. Why is this phenomenon occurring? And is it explainable? And is there a solution to it? Is there anything that can be done from either community or individuals in that position that could make it better? So that was the area of knowledge that I became aware of wanting to explore further throughout that activity. And to that effect, I was able to, the resources that I did use, I looked in the book again, but it was really hard to find something from the book related specifically to this particular activity. But what I was able to find was a news article by the New York Times, and it was called "The Case for Black Doctors." And what that did, it explored why there are so few African American doctors in the United States, and B, what attitudes toward African American doctors and toward all race of doctors is on the part of African Americans. So if maybe that wasn't well explained, the article reviewed, the trust and the confidence that African American clients had in clinicians of all races. And what they found is African American clients were much more likely to show trust in African American doctors. And to explore that point, the article went further. It went on to say that, in fact, African Americans and Caucasians are diagnosed at about the same rate for mental health, for physical issues and that type of thing. However, because there is a fear in the African community of doctors, because they found evidence to suggest African Americans are much more likely to be treated for mental health issues and physical disturbance issues in an emergency room setting, or in a setting to where they can't be accessed long-term, they aren't provided long-term care, whereas Caucasians are more likely to be seen in a clinical setting to where they can receive that long-term care. And so they pointed that to one particular reason. They said that a majority of that can be linked to more often that their Caucasian individuals and clients will be able to afford the necessary things to take off of work, attend a clinic, to pay for the insurance that it will require to see a doctor, to have that insurance. Whereas an African-American individual and their family may be less likely to be able to take off work to pay for that insurance that they may need. So they are resort to attending to the emergency room because they know that they can't be denied care, and it's care that they desperately need, whether it's for a physical ailment or whether it's for a mental disturbance or ailment that they may be suffering through. Let's see. So that was just a little bit about the reasoning of why they believe, or why it is observed that African Americans and minority communities alike feel more comfortable with an individual of their community working with them in a setting such as an educational setting, a clinical setting, and a social work setting. Yes. And just to add to that point, because I mean, I have all the time in the world, I suppose, but they find that a lot of health-related problems such as high cholesterol, heart disease, obesity is more prevalent in minority and African-American communities, and they believe that is because there are so few African-American and minority doctors in these communities. You know, there's not enough, I guess you could say, role modeling going on. But for whatever reason, that is occurring. And another reason is that according to the New York Times article, both of these things are, according to the New York Times article, African-American students or medical students are twice as likely to go into a poor, poverty-stricken area rather than going to a high poverty or a low poverty area. And what that means, or what that equates to, is that when these African-American students, who there obviously are a lot of them, but what they're doing is they're placing themselves in low poverty areas with very few doctors. So so it's actually limiting who is able to be seen by an African-American doctor. Whereas white students are more likely to go into a low poverty area to where they would be able to see more clients, go to somewhere maybe where they were paid better, an agency where there'd be more clinicians employed, so that they are able to see a wide range of clients and ethnic groups. Let's see. So that is specifically what I was able to learn through my research. Lastly, on the last question, describe what surprised or interested you most professionally or personally, and how this will help build competency as a practitioner capable of engaging diverse factors of well-being for clients. How this aided me, how this helped me build some personal competency, I simply didn't know that there was any untrust between minority communities or African-American communities when it comes to seeking health care, seeking assistance with mental issues or physical issues. I simply didn't know. You know, I thought that for whatever reason, all groups of people probably were able to, all held the same feelings about being able to seek medical care and their interest in seeking help toward those issues. In the future, though, I have a much better understanding of how certain groups do feel about the help of from clinicians, and especially from clinicians that are of a different racial or ethnic group than their own. So in the future, you know, what I'll be maybe able to do if I am maybe an agency director or even a practicing social worker. If I am, you know, with this knowledge, I will have the awareness to ask, you know, excuse me, would you rather see, maybe if I were to have a minority population come in, you know, ask their feelings and thoughts about being seen by a Caucasian or by an individual of a different ethnic or racial group than their own. How do they feel about that? Would they rather be seen by someone from their own ethnic or racial group? Would that make them feel more comfortable? How will that inhibit their treatment? And so on and so forth. And just by doing the activity and by doing the research I have, I've become a lot more aware of that and will help apply that knowledge in my future interactions with clients. And the second part of question 4 is, how has this activity helped me to become an ethical leader by increasing my self-monitoring needed to identify personal thoughts, patterns, biases, strengths, and affect? So how this will help me identify my personal thoughts and patterns, I think the best way to do that is through knowledge. Like I said, this is sort of an answer to question A as well. I feel like both of them require an answer to. Excuse me. But I think it's just comes down to education. The more you learn, the more you're able to reflect upon what you interact with on a daily basis in terms of how you feel about it, learning how you feel, educating yourself about why you may feel the way that you do, and lastly, educating yourself about why others may feel the way that they do. As we've done today, I wasn't sure about why some minority groups and African Americans may feel distrust or uneasy around certain medical professionals of a different racial or ethnic group than their own. After some research and after doing the proper reading that I needed to, I've become a lot more aware of why those issues occur and some reasoning and rationale that is understandable to me about why they make those decisions and how I, personally as a Caucasian care provider, can help myself provide those services to African American and minority communities, and how I can further benefit my colleagues and my future agencies on how to better serve these communities in the future. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you.